Welcome to Every Musical Ever. This podcast contains strong language and it's not suitable for children.
Hello, welcome to Every Musical Ever. I'm your host, Richard Carroll. This week we are talking about Annie with my guests David Campbell and Lisa Campbell. The sun will come out tomorrow.
It's time to chat, just you and me. How many musicals can there be? I hope that there's infinity. Kettle on and pour the tea. Every musical ever. It's a show that is so clever. It's a very fine endeavor. Every musical ever.
Hello, I know I just said hello in the intro, but hello again. It's me, Richard Carroll, your host. I'm very excited about this week's episode. Annie was my absolute favorite movie as a child, me and my two sisters, which I'd get into in this episode. And I'm joined by David and Lisa Campbell, who were my guests on the very first episode ever of Every Musical Ever, which we did on Les Miserables, which was released in early 2017. I think we recorded it in late 2016, so it's going back a while now. And we've been saying probably since then that we'll do another episode on Annie, and we finally have. So I hope it was worth the wait. If you're in Australia, they probably need no introduction, but David Campbell is an acclaimed multi-award-winning star of musical theatre, recording artist, television host, done it all. And Lisa Campbell is a recovering actress, very successful award-winning producer, and she's the chair of the Hayes Theatre that you may have heard us talk about on here before, which is a great little powerhouse musical theatre venue in Sydney, Australia, that I was also a part of founding. Lisa is one of my oldest friends. We've known each other since we were about 11 or 12 years old at school in England, and somehow we've both ended up in Sydney making theatre together. Make sure that you join in the conversation. We are at Every Musical Pod on all forms of social media. There's links in the episode description below. And as always, you can get an extended video edition of this podcast on our Patreon page, which is also linked below. Please make sure you send us your feedback either via social media or email, link below, on this episode for Friday's Encore Annie episode. I really like to hear from you and share your correspondence on our Encore episodes. You always need to come up with either trivia or opinions that are far superior to mine or my guests. So thank you for that, and thank you for letting me co-opt them. Okay, let's get on to the conversation. Here is myself, David Campbell, and Lisa Campbell talking about Annie.
Every musical ever, you can listen wherever, no script whatsoever. Skip an episode never. Every musical ever, squeeze.
Hi.
Hi,
Are
Richie.
we on? Hi.
How long have we been waiting to do this podcast?
When did you start doing these? Like 5 years ago?
I started doing them in January 2017, 3.5 years ago. So 3.5 years?
Yes.
Basically.
Yes. This has been on the cards. We've been asking you to do this, and then we've just been actually trying to schedule it for 2.5 years.
And you selfishly have had 3 young children and careers of your own.
I know, it's stupid.
That get in the way.
We apologise. We'd like to publicly apologise
Yes,
now
thank
to your
you.
listeners.
That's really what this is. It's like Oprah and James Frey.
If we have offended anybody by not doing this.
So, Annie, let's talk about our first experiences with Annie.
I grew up in the UK in a place called Bedfordshire, and there was a local amateur dramatic society, and they
Always
had...
the way. Trying to get you.
They had announced that they were going to do Annie, and I wasn't aware of it. My dad came home with the cassette of the movie soundtrack.
How old were you?
9. Then I started watching the movie.
I remember the film growing up because it's my time, because I'm old.
Oh, God, yeah.
But I never saw the movie in the cinemas because, what would I want to go see a movie about a little girl for? Well done, that was progressive back in the early 80s, wasn't it, for a young boy?
Just like Daddy Warbucks.
Oh. So we'll spin around to that later on. And then my high school did it I was in year 10.
How are we? No.
I was that 15 or something?
I was 15, yeah. And so I auditioned for Daddy Warbucks.
Uh-huh.
Didn't get it. Still burning about it a little bit.
Who did get Daddy Warbucks?
Scott Beatson. Shout out to Scott Beatson, who was a friend of mine and was a great guy. But I was
Was he a
watching
good Daddy Warbucks?
Where is he now?
Look, who knows? Scott, if you're listening, please reach out. We're worried about you. It's actually been decades. I hope he's okay, actually. And that's a preface it with saying that.
You can't tell. It was Elizabeth.
And but so Scott was Daddy Warbucks, and watching the film again, I thought, oh, that's because he was taller, because we had to use a year 8 girl to be Annie. Because
Whoa. Scott was better than you. And now you're just saying it was just because he was taller.
no, it was a height thing.
Yeah.
He was balder.
In year 10. Okay. All right, and then and then I got cast as Rooster, and that
Good role.
It's a great, and I had no idea. It was the first time I'd ever acted, first time I'd ever performed on stage, except for like a school rock band. So I had a blast doing it in the school hall, which is now, of course, RIP, demolished.
Oh, yeah.
So
Is that the
need.
David Campbell Hall?
No, it was just a regular school hall where we had a lunch.
Where's the David Campbell Hall? Or is that what it is? Or
It
is
was it was on the same campus eventually.
The
That's
David
also
Campbell
been
Performing Arts
demolished?
Centre.
Performing Arts Centre.
Gone.
That's
Gone.
Dead.
RIP that too.
Gone the same way
RIP,
as Scott
yeah.
They're
Beeston.
ruthless, Elizabeth, aren't they?
Really, they build you up and they knock you down. That's what they do in Adelaide.
Where was the outcry when we got statues of slave traders? Where was the outcry when David Campbell Hall was there?
No one. There was no outcry at all.
And what was it that you did in order to have it demolished?
No.
Yeah.
I know why I got my name on it.
Oh,
As
go
I
on.
said, because there's two people they've got this money from the government to build a performing arts centre. 2 people's names were put forward, and apparently once they dug a little bit into the first guy's name, who was the front runner, they found out there was a criminal record.
Oh,
So I got
was
it.
Jimmy Barnes?
Anyway, there you go.
Okay.
We've digressed enough.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And how was the
condolences.
reviews for your production of Annie? How was your performance received?
Look, it was spectacular. Obviously, the people screamed, they laughed. I remember some things really clearly, and don't remember any scenes at all. Watching the movie again, I was going, do I remember this
How do
bit?
you not remember it? I remember everything. So I got into my Amateur Dramatics
yeah,
Society,
okay,
by the way.
yes.
Heading back.
It's been approximately the same time.
You would have been 1988,
Yeah.
and I'd been 1990.
Okay, so you were building on his legacy.
Yeah. But apparently, there are 600 to 900 productions of Annie done in the US alone every year.
Yeah.
So
Well,
imagine
surprised me.
worldwide.
Well, it was the same production that was transferred, obviously,
Yeah,
to
that's
Lisa's.
right. Yeah.
Cam Mac picked it up.
I remember everything about my production, but I also do have it on VHS now. It's on a hard drive.
Okay, well, that's a bit
There.
unfair. To be fair to me, I was in the midst of really bad puberty, and I'm a boy, and it was 30 years ago. So yeah, it's a little cloudier for me.
But I haven't seen it since for a long
But
time.
you have watched it again. It's only up here in the old
Okay.
Brainsmiths.
I think if you got it on a hard drive, we need it for the extra features for our Patreon subscribers. We need them.
I have thought recently that there are a couple of things that I know happen in it, which I do, which are terrible.
What did you play? Who
So
were
we
you?
haven't said who you cast as.
July. So I
I'm
was
not-
the only person who went for the show but didn't audition to be Annie because I know my limitations.
Oh, hang on. Who's July? An orphan?
Oh whoa! Yeah, one of the top ones.
Really? I don't remember her.
I
I
don't
remember
know
Molly
her.
and Pepper.
Molly.
Pepper was the only one I remember.
There's Molly, Pepper, Tessie, July, and so Tessie's the one who says "Oh my goodness" a lot.
Oh yeah.
Pepper is the one who has fights
She's
a
the
lot.
tough one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she.
July doesn't have as much to do in the movie as she does in the stage show.
Okay.
She's pivotal.
It really was originally called July.
Yeah. But when I was looking, because I was looking on the Wikipedias and stuff of various productions and incarnations of the
Googling
show.
the name plus July.
But no, but a lot of the Julys on Broadway were the understudies of the Annies.
Oh yeah.
So it has to be one of those roles that is not significant enough that it can't be covered by a swing.
Wasn't Aileen Quinn a cover?
She was
a swing.
Andrea McArdle played Pepper Out of Town, and they had another girl called Kristen Vigard who was playing Annie. This was at Goodspeed in Connecticut, and they decided that Kristen Vigard's genuinely sweet interpretation was not tough enough. So they fired her, and Andrea McArdle was bumped up from Pepper.
How do you fire a kid?
But not just that, but they actually didn't fire her. What they did was they downgraded her. So on Broadway, she was the cover.
Right. Okay.
So she was still in the show,
Second
but she was
Annie.
downgraded to the cover. Yeah.
There are many stories like that involved in this production.
Imagine the All About Eve stuff that's going on with those Julys who are the cover.
All About July.
Pushing Annie's downstairs.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and of course in those days Andrew McArdle just did all the performances. There was no like, we're going to have 4 different casts, just like, you're Annie.
And then they took her to the UK. She was the original in the
was
UK.
Jeez.
Wow, good for her. Good for her.
I never had her.
And Sarah Jessica Parker was famously a replacement Annie, played the role on Broadway. Do you know that June Havoc was
Miss Hannigan, yeah. I read that the other day.
Wow.
Baby June from Gypsy fame, yes.
Yeah.
She played Miss Hannigan on Broadway.
And Betty Hutton.
Betty Hutton went in.
Imagine seeing Betty Hutton.
Yeah.
Or seeing June Havoc. Which, there's another
That's
connection.
camp.
There's another connection between June Havoc and the choreographer. She choreographed Can't Stop the Music, which June Havoc is also in.
Oh, wow.
Arlene Phillips.
Well, my first experience with Annie, I was never in it. I actually never saw it on stage until I came to Australia and saw the 2012 one with Anthony Wallow and Nancy Hayes. But the movie was a very important text in my development as an artist. And so we used to have a video rental store down the road from us when I lived in North London as a small child, and with my 2 sisters, and we would go down and rent Annie like every week. So we were allowed to rent a video every week. And they had like a loyalty system where if you rented 10 videos, you got like a free rental. And I remember that we had our free rental, and they were like, you've rented Annie 10 times. What would you like for your free rental? Annie, please.
It's so sweet.
I was just like, why didn't we just buy this VHS? Just record it off the TV.
That's because VHS back in the day were like $100. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is one of those movies that is very much imprinted in my mind from having seen it a million times.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. Anyone know the comic strip or anything like that? Like,
No, but apparently the only characters that transfer are Annie,
Daddy Warbucks.
Daddy Warbucks, and I think Sandy.
Not Miss Hannigan?
No.
I was reading about even simple things like it's set in New York during the Depression. It was in newspapers from like the 20s through till, I think it was cancelled in 2010, so obviously like almost a century. It was just always set
Modern day.
when it was being written. So even just things like a Depression setting were decisions they had to make for the movie. And they set it in New York because they all lived in New York and it's going to be on Broadway.
And so Thomas Meehan, the book writer, so it was purposefully set in the Depression because he wanted it to reflect Nixon-era America.
Yeah, it was the Vietnam War and Nixon was in power and they were like, everyone's depressed, let's set it somewhere when people were also depressed.
And yet she didn't survive the global financial crisis. The irony of that.
So all of that stuff was sort of conceptualized for the musical, which is interesting. Yeah, and they very consciously were like, Oliver was a big success, because they started working on it in the early 70s, I think. And they were like, let's just do Oliver with a girl, basically, which is what it is.
Smart idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple elevator pitch. It's Oliver, but it's a girl. I'm in. Here's $1 million.
And the character of Annie is a much better character than the character of Oliver. 'Cause I did a podcast with Keegan Joyce about Oliver recently, and he played Oliver in the John Waters production in 2002. And
Nobody cares about Oliver.
exactly, it's like,
Nobody cares about. Everyone cares about Artful Dodger and
Oh,
Garrison
I see what you
and
mean. I think
Fagin.
no one cares about the
It
musical.
might as well just be
Oliver.
called those
Dodger.
three and then this
Dodger,
guy on the side.
exclamation
he's
mark.
just, but even in the novel, it's his cipher, basically.
Yeah.
We're just seeing it all through his eyes, and there's just nothing exciting.
Oh,
about
he's
him.
bland. He has no agency.
Yeah, and he's much sort of tougher and more interesting, and exactly has a lot more agency. Although there is, of course, a similarity in the Fagin and Miss Hannigan roles that they are still like the best roles. In the show.
And Bill Sykes and Rooster, which we commented on the other day.
In the movie,
Yeah,
I'm not sure if the same in the stage show, but in the movie it's like, oh my god, he's just Dr. Carroll and he's going up the bridge and it's like the end of Oliver.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to solve this problem or make it disappear or something.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah.
He says, I'm going to kill her.
Right. Okay.
Hey, we'll
that's
get to
clear.
that point
That's
later.
clear.
Anyway, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it yet, stop this and watch it.
But that was also changed for the movie the fact that Miss Hannigan has a sort of a change of heart. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh no, it's gone too far. I've got to save her.
I need to be in the finale on an elephant.
I'd forgotten about that. Whoa, the finale. Yeah.
Let's work
Well,
towards that,
okay.
people. Let's work towards it.
All right. Hi, I'm just breaking in for a minute to ask you to consider donating to Literacy for Life Foundation. They are an Aboriginal-run charity that trains local people to deliver literacy classes in their communities. They want to end illiteracy in Aboriginal communities, and they use an innovative campaign approach that has been delivered in other locations around the world with great success, and they need our help to go national. Find out more or make a tax-deductible donation at lflf.org.au. There's a link in the episode description. So Annie's a much better character, and I can see why all the young girls want to play Annie.
She's empowered, right?
Yeah,
She's
and
a feminist.
She's like, I'm in this crappy situation and I'm going to do something about it. And she knows who she is. She maintains her shape, as we would say in therapy speak. People are always like, you're this, you're that, you can't do this.
She's also
like,
a socialist in a capitalist world.
That's true. She does. She converts Daddy Warbucks to socialism.
She does.
Yeah.
As does Grace.
Mm-hmm.
But Grace has been, in that world for a while. She's not forcing the issue. She's working hard within capitalism. It's Annie who's the real person. She's the Bernie Sanders in all of this.
Yeah, that's true.
Or the one.
Pushes
She's
us to the
Elizabeth
left.
Warren.
Yeah, she does. Yeah. Okay, let's talk through the characters. Annie, Daddy Warbucks, good role. You covered it.
I covered it, and I'm glad I didn't get it. I mean, it's wonderfully done in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, we've got to look at this in two ways, which is that, I mean, I presume we are in general going to be talking about the movie more.
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about both. Yeah.
We can talk about NYC and Herbert Hoover, but we'll get to those later.
Yes.
But I mean, I think that because Albert Finney is so good,
Yeah.
that he brings so much to it.
Yeah.
And also, what I found really interesting is the arc that he has. That it's really early on that he turns and wants to adopt her and loves her. Mm-hmm. And then, at least halfway through, he's done. We've got his trajectory, and then the second half of it is
The heist.
and him working towards making this girl's dreams come true is an incredibly selfless act. So he sort of comes of age as a character very early on, more early than you'd perhaps think of in this sort of
Well,
thing.
in
Where
other
you'd think that
movies
he
like this, where you have a capitalist sort of like icon, like Mr. Banks or something like that, he doesn't have an epiphany
absolutely,
till later in
it
the
takes
film.
till it takes the end.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so he becomes likable very, very early.
Yes, because he is kind of comically, not unlikable exactly, but just, I mean, it's obviously, it is a comic strip, but like, you can see that in the characters. Like, Miss Hannigan is just like villainous panto dame, drunk,
Thirsty.
terrible. Yes.
Thirsty in
She is
every
so
way.
thirsty.
Thirsty AF.
And Daddy Warbucks is like, I'm a billionaire. All I care about is money. And,
Get me Woodrow Wilson on the phone.
Yeah.
Get me Edgar Hoover.
But he is, but I'm becoming a Daddy Warbucks
but?
apologist.
Oh, God.
But the whole time, so from Annie's first arrival, even though he's sort of like, I wanted a boy.
Orphans are boys.
Yeah. But that's like 3 lines. And then after that, everything that Annie says, he takes on board. So he's immediately open to her, which is, I mean, it doesn't cause much conflict. The conflict arises elsewhere. But I think that's a really interesting choice, that he is immediately open to her.
But I think that's because the character of Annie is...
Disarming.
Is disarming, but she's also in his face. I mean, she knows she's got one shot at this. I think the great thing about her drive, of Annie's drive, is that, the dog jumps in the pool, he barks at it. Any other kid, any one of our kids would probably take the dog and run away and go, oh, God, no. She's like, hey, he just wants to swim with you. He thought you were drowning. Like, constantly they're reassuring the audience that Annie is on the front foot and she needs to be here. Otherwise, she's stuck with old, with Carol not pulling her ear to her mum. She's actually just...
Well, when you say all of our kids would have behaved like that.
I don't know.
I just have to say one thing, that
Yeah.
Betty, we watched the movie with them, they've seen it many times before, but yesterday Betty just turned around to us and
Talking about
said,
the parents coming back.
she said, betcha they're dead.
About Annie's real parents.
She was right.
She was right. They're dead.
Wow.
It was an extraordinary.
It was
zinger
very funny,
from a
but
5-year-old.
yeah.
That is one of the things that I remember about the movie, is the way that the fact that Annie's parents are really dead is kind of skipped over in that scene leading into Easy Street.
Yeah.
The whole thing is like, is she going to find her real parents? And you kind of, I guess, as a child would think like this is going to end with her finding her real parents. And then when Richard and Lily come and is Hannah's like, oh, her parents are dead. Here, they left her this locket, so we can. It's like, what? Oh,
Her parents died in the fire.
yeah.
But in the movie, that doesn't happen till in the stage show. Sorry, that doesn't happen till the end.
Yes, that whole sort of final act is different in the movie. In the musical, they sort of go to the mansion and they're unveiled there, and it's just the end. Whereas we have the whole chase and climbing up the bridge.
It was
and all
the
that
biggest
stuff.
budget musical ever made for its time.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
Up to that moment in time, it was the biggest budget music, and so it struggled to make its money back. I think.
Yeah,
But what's
it made money,
astonishing
but not a huge amount.
is that can we
You
just
can see
have a
it.
look?
You can see the money.
You see the money,
You
but
see the
look
money.
at the cast.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
100%.
obviously, it must have been. I mean, the show was successful on Broadway.
Finney wouldn't have been cheap alone.
But just think about but the fact they had John Huston doing that. I mean, that's madness.
He did one more thing after Annie, then Prince's Honor. We looked it up last night.
Prince's Honor.
What was it he did after Annie? He did one more thing after. I'll look it up.
It was the first and only time he ever directed a musical.
Not bad because he pulls in some Busby Berkeley things like
It's
in the
beautiful.
Radio City music number.
Yeah.
There's some great visuals and he really does.
Oh,
do
I
some
think
beautiful things.
that's brilliantly done. Hard Knock Life is so well done. Easy Street is perfection.
Yeah.
Even the smaller numbers.
That's a reshoot.
I
Easy Street.
love Easy Street. Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. The cast, so yeah, obviously Albert Finney we've talked about already. Carol Burnett, I mean, iconic. Iconic performance. And what I love about that as well is that people who are not into old showbiz things like
Who
we
are those people?
I occasionally come across them.
They're not listening to this.
That's true.
Oh,
But-
I found it. It was Escape to Victory. It's the movie.
Ah,
behind
you
it.
did
yeah,
before,
yeah.
Crazy.
For example, when I put up a video of Julie Andrews and Carol Burnett at Carnegie Hall on the Every Musical Ever Facebook page, which has had 2 million views now, and someone once saw it and was like, "Is that Miss Hannigan?"
Wow,
So
that's
like,
how it's played.
Yes, it is, but it's like that's so everyone, even if they don't know Carol Burnett, they don't know anything about that, they know Miss
I
Hannigan.
think everybody has a connection to this movie.
The casting of Tim Curry and Carol Burnett as brother and sister
It's
Yeah.
perfect.
is so good because they have the same face. They have the same long face and the big eyes. It's just spectacular casting.
But it's pretty dumb when she doesn't recognise him. Where he's like, "Oh, here I am with a fake moustache." It's like,
I'll
come
take it
on.
off to reveal my slightly slimmer moustache.
It's like a terrible drag reveal.
Yeah, it's true. And then on top of that, you've got Anne Ryan King and Bernadette Peters.
It's just...
Although I would say you probably get them for cheaper during the time.
No, but they're
Benedict
incredible.
was massive at that time.
Yeah, but she'd only really done the jerk up until this time, right?
I'm not just talking about star power though. I'm talking about like how great.
on-screen power.
Yeah, when you look at that Easy Street number, it's brilliant because it's Carol Burnett, Tim Curry, and Bernadette Peters.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
brilliant.
absolutely. But also, the billing on the film was and Bernadette Peters.
Okay.
So she was
Good
obviously...
agenting right there.
Yeah, good agent.
Yeah.
Good agent.
And ranking. I mean, geez, oh.
I'm
It's
saying
just...
to watch her do that big dance routine
We got
Yeah.
Annie.
is
It's-
just
it's
when she really
spectacular.
starts to cut loose by herself. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Stunning. What
Yeah,
a
so
cast.
the pedigree of this film is insane.
And that's the thing. It's like because the stage show had been a big success, but I think it still has some of these associations. But certainly at the time was very kind of like it's twee, it's for kids, it's corny. And so I think it was really smart having those really super skilled musical stars, comedians to play the roles. I think
And-
it makes it much better than you expect.
But Albert Finney is neither of those.
Yes, that's true.
It's mad that he's in this role. It's just insane. He's perfection,
Yeah.
but it is mad.
I think
don't
he
know
is
how.
great in this role.
Yeah.
Just stunning. And yeah, he makes the film for me.
Really? That's
Yes.
interesting. I'd definitely say, I think he's great.
Carol
I'd definitely say
Burnett.
Carol Burnett makes the film.
Carol Burnett is brilliant, but you expect that. And that role attracts that.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. We weren't expecting Carol Burnett to pull that off.
It's not like she's made a whole bunch of classic movies. Like,
Yeah.
obviously we know
No.
her
Lily
as a-
Tomlin
as a-
or Bette Midler.
No, but like her use of language and her timing
Her
and
eccentricity.
yeah,
Yeah.
and every single line that she gives, it's just perfection. But all I'm saying is that that's what
Yeah.
you expect and what you get. What I love about Albert Finney is that you are getting a weight of a performance that you wouldn't necessarily get in those roles.
Yeah, fair enough. I would say with Carol Burnett, probably my favourite thing is that she gives you a very particular kind of drunkenness because, people playing drunks on screen can get really boring.
Yes.
And she does it in a way that's not... as a kid, I don't think I wasn't thinking, oh, she's drunk. I was just thinking, she's a really strange woman with no filter and, who keeps falling over and hitting kids. I love it. I'm here for it.
But you're right, though, because she's playing drunk on so many different levels that it's appealing to so many different people. You know, she's trying to do that whole "I'm really sober but I'm drunk" thing,
Yeah.
which is what the ideal drunk acting.
Yeah.
You know she's staggering around and drunk. She's also, her emotions are wild in this. She's
And sometimes-
thirsty, she's
Exactly.
over-sexualized.
She's bringing down all of her.
angry.
She's got no boundaries.
She's got no boundaries.
Yeah.
She's like almost like bipolar in her mood swings.
And also,
there.
you see her you're in different phases of drunkenness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, sometimes she's hungover, sometimes she's...
She blows the whistle and freaks her own head out. It's
Yeah.
all of it is just like there are comedy times in here that only an actor of her ilk and her pedigree could do. It's like watching Schitt's Creek and watching Moira Rose in that.
Which hasn't seen Schitt's
only
Creek.
that actor can do that and play it that well.
Yeah.
And you have to have those years.
And kudos to John Huston for giving her enough freedom to do all that
Yeah.
awesome stuff, but not too much to overpower the scenes or be too much. I was talking to Mikey about Annie this morning, and first of all, this is my boyfriend, he did, when he was a child, a production of Annie, just with his parents, and in which he played Annie and Miss Hannigan.
When did they know he was gay?
He made his sister Georgia play like Pepper or whatever, and then
Right.
when there was a
July?
scene when there was a scene with Annie and Miss Hannigan, then Georgia would be Annie. So Miss Hannigan was like, she trumped. If he had to make a choice, he would play
course.
Miss Hannigan.
This is genius.
Yeah, and it was like site specific. So they would do like Easy Street up and down the stairs, and then they'd go to the bedroom to do the bunk beds things
This
to sing
is
maybe.
genius.
Oh, why haven't our kids done
It was
this?
a lot. So, but he said that the thing he was most fascinated with, and this is a bit telling, was her stirring the bathtub full of gin.
Yes.
Which he just thought was
With the paddle that she hits the
incredible.
kids with.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fabulous.
Yeah. So we're talking about how amazing the cast is of the 1982 movie. There have, of course, been a couple of other versions of the movie. Now, have you ever seen either the Kathy Bates version?
No,
Of course not.
So there's the Kathy Bates version, which was a made-for-TV Disney movie.
Sure, it's great.
it's with Kristen Chenoweth plays Lily.
It was 1999.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Kathy Bates as Miss Hannigan, Victor Garber as Daddy Warbucks,
Oh.
Alan Cumming as Rooster, Audra McDonald as Grace, Kristen
That's
Chenoweth
nice.
as Lily,
They're all amazing.
and a girl called Alicia Morton as Annie. I also haven't seen it, but I don't think it set the world on fire. Apparently, it was more true to the original stage musical.
Because Martin Charnan didn't like this. He didn't like the movie.
He didn't like the 1982 movie. No, he was not happy about
He was
it.
very vocal about it, which is great because it just made you a shit ton of money.
How could you not like it?
He
To
said
what-
the movie distorted what the musical was, and we were culpable of the reason we didn't exercise any kind of creative control because we sold the rights for a considerable amount of money. He said that they made major changes in the film that destroyed the essence of Annie. Finney was an Englishman who screamed. Carol Burnett was a man crazy drunk, and Annie was cuted up. Worse, the emotional relationship between Annie and Warbucks was distorted, and they even downplayed the hit song Tomorrow because Ray Stark thought it was corny. I don't know if I agree with any of that. I mean, I do
No.
agree.
I think Tomorrow is definitely missing from parts of the movie. Like having that moment of her singing Tomorrow is something that I remember in the stage show. That is like
I remember it
it's
from the
on.
movie, definitely.
But it's in the intro of the movie. It's not even like given much weight, and then she sings it to J. Edgar Hoover, not J. Edgar Hoover, FDR.
Yeah.
Republicans too, Oliver.
But like that's not giving it its moment. I agree with him on the Tomorrow thing. But maybe gets far more real estate in this movie than any other song.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe's a theme. I mean, even Warbucks sings a bit of Maybe.
Yeah, I think he
Yeah,
gets like
that's
2
true.
reprises or something.
In the stage show, it's early and it's just her centre stage holding the dog.
I would argue
As far-
controversial hot take, that Maybe is a better song. And
That is a hot
that's
take.
maybe, no pun intended, that's why they lent on that song more for the movie.
I
I think it's
reckon-
clever making Tomorrow almost like a high hope song that can lift people out of the, because it is a bit of a propaganda-ish sort of song.
But Tomorrow belongs to me.
Sorry.
Tomorrow belongs to
listen
Annie.
to these bangers. This is how the order.
Okay.
Maybe, this is in the stage show,
Yeah.
maybe It's a Hard Knock Life Tomorrow. Bam, those 3.
You,
We'd like to thank you, Heather.
you're out for M&Ms after that. You need a break.
Yeah, It's a Hard Knock Life we haven't talked about. That's a classic.
Oh,
I would venture to say that kids, your actual real life kids who love Annie, are more likely to sing Maybe or It's a Hard Knock Life than they are to actually want to sing Tomorrow. Is that wrong?
Correct.
And also, how's the choreography in the movie of It's a Hard Knock Life?
Oh.
There's some
It's
circus
amazing.
performers in there.
I love that.
These kids are not just, they are given it.
And it's very like, to bring back to Oliver again, it's very like Food Glorious Food with the banging of the bowls
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, all of the buckets and the scrubbing in time and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
But
It's
it's
so
great.
good.
It's
I
really
love
well
it.
done.
Absolutely, it's much better shot than the Oliver movie.
Yeah.
Little Girls, Miss Hannigan's number. Again, I just obsessed with Carol Burnett's version of that in the movie.
Yes.
It's also an opportunity for us to introduced the concept of the 2014 movie. Now, have you guys seen that?
No, this is.
I have seen only that number.
Oh, I've seen the trailer. Does that count?
No, but it's probably enough.
Yeah.
Still
got an opinion though.
I watched it so you don't have to, and it is one of those movies that I wouldn't say so bad it's good, but so bad you want to keep watching it. Actually, maybe the so bad is not even the description. I think we're kind of used to crappy modern remakes of movies that we loved, but the weird thing about this version of Annie is how changed it is. And especially for a musical, the fact that they haven't just updated the arrangements of the songs, but they've kind of like remixed them and written, like with Little Girls, for example, when Cameron Diaz does Little Girls, it has the chorus of Little Girls, but a completely different verse with new lyrics and a new tune. So it's kind of like, I mean, I think that they sort of took the inspiration of the Jay-Z Hard Knock Life, which sampled Hard Knock Life.
Which is also perfect.
And several of the songs in this version of Annie essentially just sample the previous songs. So they obviously had a huge amount of like creative license with that stuff. But it kind of
who else is in this film?
So Jamie Foxx plays
That's
Will
right.
Stacks. So he's not actually called Daddy Warbucks.
I remember the trailer thinking like, this doesn't seem like it's the same Annie, but I didn't think the songs were that bad.
They're just so completely different that you kind of can't really compare them and say they're like better or worse. They're just like, it's just they're just different songs.
Who else is in it?
So Kavanjanae Wallace plays Annie. So it was originally developed by Will Smith as a vehicle for Willow, but she grew too old. So they just persisted with it.
Hence why Daddy Warbucks is called Will Stacks.
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh my God, yes.
Kavanjanae Wallace. Rose Byrne plays Grace.
Okay.
She's great and everything. Cameron Diaz and Miss Hannigan, which is also really weird casting.
Well, she played a bad teacher? Well, she's already done that sort of bad sort of drunk acting.
But like, when you think like, okay, this is a great...
She's
like,
not a comedian.
So exactly, someone to inherit the mantle from like Carol Burnett of this amazing sort of panto villain. Well, let's say Cameron Diaz. It's also her final movie. Maybe that's why she retired from acting immediately afterwards.
Oh my God. All I can do, I'm just replaying that Little Girls in my mind.
Yeah, and it's incredibly auto-tuned.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
So for those of you who haven't seen it, I can't explain why it's happening. When she walks around like her apartment and the girls are like the furniture.
Yeah, so it's like she's hallucinating because, you know, the idea of I can't get away from little girls. So she's walking around her apartment because they also change it so that she doesn't run an orphanage. She like lives in an apartment and she fosters all these kids to get money.
Is she also on mushrooms? Is that why they're the furniture?
Maybe that's the implication. Yeah, so she'll walk into a room where there's a table, and then the camera will turn away and that will turn back, and the table is turned into like a little girl like on all fours with a tabletop on her.
Instead of a lamp, it's a little girl like holding a lampshade, but it's not sort of like anything more stylized.
It's hallucinating.
No, because it's not stylized
like
in any way. It's just like a girl holding a lampshade.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't look like it's trippy at all. It's as less effective than Mikey playing both Annie and Miss Hannigan.
I heard raves.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's very strange. And
What a choice! Who directed it?
it was directed by Will Gluck. The plot's quite different. So apart from the fact that, you know, she gets adopted by Will Stacks, etc. But then there's this whole thing about, because it's set now, and so he's like this Wall Street billionaire, and there's a lot about like philanthropy, and then she has to make a speech about something. She like gets to make the speech, and then it's exposed that she can't read. And so, so that's very sad. And then there's this whole thing about like the journey of that, and it ends with her like starting a foundation to help illiterate kids and all this kind of thing.
Okay,
So-
cool. I mean, it sounds
That's
interesting.
just a different film.
But just make
Exactly.
that movie with music.
Yes.
Don't call it Annie. That sounds like a good film anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess it's like a reboot. I guess
Yeah.
if you look at something like, you know, other comic
Star
book
is Born.
movies. Yes, or A Star is Born. Yeah.
This show is supported by Sonnet. Listening to podcasts shouldn't be hard, but so many podcast apps on Android are cluttered and confusing. With its modern, clean design and extremely user-friendly interface, Sonnet makes it easy for those on Android to discover, listen, subscribe, and get notified of new episodes. Just do a simple search for Sonnet on Google Play, or go to sonnet.fm, sonnet.fm.
There's also Annie 2, A Royal Adventure.
When was that made?
That was made in 1995.
Because
And that's
there's
not
Annie-
Annie. That's not Annie
Warbucks.
Warbucks.
The sequel.
No. So there's Annie Warbucks, the stage sequel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's talk about that first, shall we?
Because that was a flop, yeah?
That was an absolute disaster. So
I was in New York when that was
Let's
on.
call Michelle Guthrie for neglected musicals.
So,
Annie Warbucks.
Annie to Miss Hannigan's Revenge is what it's called first of all, when it opened in Washington DC to universally disastrous reviews.
Who was Miss Hannigan?
December 1989.
Dorothy Loudon?
I don't have the cast here. I'm going to find out though. Then they
She's
extensively reworked the script and score, but eventually abandoned it. And then there was a second attempt. Well, actually, they're two separate musicals. They're just two attempts by the original team to make sequels. So they abandoned Annie to Miss Hannigan's Revenge. And in 1993, completely new plot, completely new score, called Annie Warbucks. Developed at good speed where the original had been done. Opened off-Broadway. Ran for 200 performances. So, like, you know, not terrible, I guess, but obviously it pales in comparison. Yeah, I mean, sequels to musicals in general, I can't think of
I was thinking the same thing.
a good example of something that's worked.
Still waiting for Les Mis too. That's not happened.
But I guess it's because what people love
Well,
about
those
musicals so much
Phantom.
is the songs, and you can't put the same songs in. Yeah, I mean, Love Never Dies obviously paled in comparison to Phantom. Grease 2, I can't think of any examples, maybe people can tweet us, of a sequel to a musical. They're quite rare as well.
There's a sequel to The Boyfriend.
Yes, it's
it
called
Girlfriend?
Marry Me, something like that. Marry
Yeah.
Me,
Darling?
Divorce Me, Darling.
Divorce Me, Darling.
Divorce Me, Darling.
Yes.
We got
And-
there.
But again,
Yeah.
did
Oh,
anybody
the fact that
notice?
we're grasping at the name of it. What a success.
Yeah, I feel like there are more sequels than that, but I can't think of a single one that's had even a modicum of success compared to, like, if you can think of obviously movies that have
Grease 2.
sequels or series that work really well.
The Godfather 2.
Grease 2.
Yeah, yeah, Grease 2. Yeah,
Empire Strikes Back.
yeah. No, so Annie: A Royal Adventure was the made-for-television sequel, and they got rid of all of the characters apart from, well, Rooster, Lily, Grace, they're all cut. I don't know who played Miss Hannigan in it, actually, because it was George Hearn played Daddy Warbucks, Ian McDiarmid played an eccentric scientist,
The Dark Lord.
Annie, Daddy Warbucks, the eccentric scientist, and one of the orphans, it says here, travelled to England where Warbucks is to be knighted by the king.
No,
It was July.
However, the kids get mixed up in the scheme of an evil noblewoman played by Joan Collins to blow up Buckingham Palace while all the heirs to the throne are present for Warbucks' knighting, thus making her queen. It's basically King Ralph.
Also, it's like when Family Ties goes to London. It just seems like one of those things like, hey,
Friends
guys.
goes to London.
Yeah, it's,
Oh,
just, it's
Are
like a
you
TV
gonna
show
go
version.
to
Yeah.
Spain?
Yeah. Doctor Dear Doctor Down Under or whatever it is.
yeah,
you
when
know?
there was on the buses down under.
On the buses down under, and,
What's
and Are You
Dr.
Being
D-
Served came down under.
What's Dr. Dear Doctor?
No, Doctor.
Divorce Me, Doctor.
No, there's another series like.
Marry Your Doctor.
No, I don't know. I think Love Thy Neighbour came down under.
Oh, God.
I know,
Just
it gets
stop.
worse.
Okay, thank you.
Cancelled.
Yeah, so that's the other version. So obviously people have really, they know how popular it is. They keep trying to do either sequels or remakes or whatever. I guess the remake with Comanche Wallace.
But it's okay, so
did
can we,
quite
what
well.
we're saying here is, the long and the short of it is, can this get out of the 20s and be redone just as Annie the Musical in a modern time?
Why?
We've got a great president.
I,
We could also be Daddy Warbucks.
I think that, and again, this is something that we talk about all the time on this podcast when we're talking about like why shows are successful, that there's no recipe. And so like there's no reason why a musical about like an orphan in the 20s and depression, like
A comic strip.
There-
Not
there's-
even like, it's a
Yeah.
syndicated comic strip that became a musical. I mean,
There's-
it's not like it's a household
and
name.
an ugly one. Like Annie looks gross. The original.
Nice.
No, I know.
controversial.
No, but the original pictures of her, like with those circles for eyes, it's horrible.
There's, yes, that's true. But there's
What was Annie on?
There's plenty of ideas for musicals that seem like they're great ideas that don't go anywhere, and then of course all of the biggest hits like your Les Mises and your Phantom of the Operas and all that kind of stuff are like, who ever thought that would work? And so I think that's the reason why you can't just take a musical and go like, well, let's use the same characters, the same setting, and make it good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And same with when you transfer a musical then to film, you have to, I'm sorry, Martin Charnon, RIP, you have to be able to like put it into that medium and see how it grows so it takes the audience with you on a different journey. You can't just, I think that's the problem when you go back and look at those sort of Les Mis movies, that they're so beholden to the original. Everything has to be like it is one stage, but just on a bigger scheme.
And something like The Producers famously, you know, a massive stage hit, and they tried to transfer it incredibly faithfully to the screen and no one cared.
Yeah.
And then, you
I've
know,
forgotten about that.
yeah, exactly. And then something like, I guess, Cabaret being the prime example of something which was really, really changed for the movie, but became its own fantastic.
And then
kind
in
of-
turn, then change
the show.
Yes, that's
I
true.
think Greece would be the same thing too.
Yes, that's true. Greece changed a lot, and then yes, because of course people go and see it when they want to see what they saw.
Yeah, reverse
Like with
engineering.
West Side Story, you know, they swapped Officer Krupke was originally in the second half because it was
Yes.
an 11 o'clock number.
Yes.
And when you go see the stage show and you see it and everyone's dying and everyone's in the point, they go, should we just sing G Officer Krupke? Like, no, it should have been done ages ago.
It is one of the strangest experiences when you know a movie really well and then you go and see the musical and it's different. It's like in Sound of Music. When
Oh,
they're like,
yeah.
why are you singing The Lonely Goat Herd? No, what is it? Why are you singing My Favourite Things in the Abbey?
Yeah.
And then
Lonely Goat Herd in the
My Favourite
Thunderstorm.
Things bit, yeah. It's, well, I guess one of the few times that audiences get to sort of see behind the curtain and understand how things work dramaturgically. That they don't necessarily understand that things get moved around and reworked like that when you're developing something.
Okay, so let's recast Annie. Sorry to take over.
No.
Can we recast it?
No,
No,
I
you
don't
mean-
want to.
Like for today? Who would do it today?
It doesn't need to be done. It's perfect.
Oh, okay. We're not getting the rights, unfortunately.
Okay, well, look, I've been cancelled.
Okay. Do we know, Ed? Do we know anyone in theatre, either overseas or in Australia, who we think would be great in any of these roles?
Well, obviously we can't say anyone but Anthony Warlow. He's clearly got the
Anthony
he did
Warlow-
Broadway and here. He's got the rights of it locked down.
Did you know that Anthony Warlow had a special song written for him when he did the show? So when he did the show first of all in Australia in 2000, 2001, they wrote him a new song called "Why Should I Change a Thing," which is like
Ironically.
just just before the end of Act One, and. So that was written especially for him, and now it's sometimes in the show and sometimes not. So when he did it on Broadway, it wasn't in the show, even though it was him.
Wow.
Yeah, so
It's really strange.
it is very strange. Yes.
But that wasn't his production. So that had already been on that Broadway production.
I think he opened it.
No,
didn't
the Broadway. Did he open it?
I think he did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought he may not have opened it.
There's also another song called "You Make Me Happy" that was written for Miss Hannigan and Grace. That was added as a showcase for Nell Carter in the 1997 Broadway revival. It's never appeared in any subsequent productions.
Interesting.
Yes.
Are there any songs from the show that should be in the film or vice versa?
Well, see, I had this weird experience as a child that obviously knew the movie, but then the cassette that we had was the Broadway cast recording. Through some kind of administrative error, my parents obviously weren't properly up to speed on how these transfers work. So I had the recording that had things like NYC and all that stuff on. That I was like, what is the song? But
I miss those
I don't
songs.
think there are any. Are there any new songs in the movie, or do they just cut?
Sign is new.
Dumb Dog. is
Let's
new.
go to the movies
Oh,
is
okay.
new.
Oh, that's
Because you have
true.
NYC.
Yes, yes.
Can we just talk about the fact they go to the movies
And go and see Camille.
and go see Camille? Okay, fair enough. But then we watched most of Camille as an audience member.
So the movie was running a bit short.
And so, I mean, it was only 2.5 hours, 80s films. That's really short. We watched most of Camille, and by the end, even Annie's asleep.
It's true.
So why have we done this?
It's
I have to
strange.
think that John Huston had a thing for that movie. Maybe he had it, like, this is my favourite movie. There's somewhere online, I think that the editor of Annie, or the supervising editor, worked on Camille.
Oh, really?
And so, but
So
I can't...
come and see some of my favourite work.
I can't think-
It's a show reel for him.
Yeah.
I think it's a her.
Oh,
I think
sorry.
so.
Oh,
And what about
yeah.
who do we see? So, and there's another great bit in it, which is the "Hey hobo man, hey dad."
Bert Healy.
In the
Yeah.
Bert Healy section, there's the uncredited Ray Bolger moment.
Oh, what?
Ray Bolger is the guy doing the
The
sound,
sound
effects.
effects and opening the door.
Really?
It's the Scarecrow.
Oh, that's camp.
Uncredited
Ray
in the
Bolger,
movie.
the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's,
Yeah.
that's good
And-
fact.
The dog catcher.
Yeah.
Who plays the dog catcher?
Don't know.
Mr. Heckles from Friends.
Good fact.
These are
So,
good
yeah.
facts.
It would have been a better fact if I'd known his name. But
Can
Mr.
we
Heckles
talk
from
about
Friends.
whether Martika is in this or not?
She is not in this.
Are we sure?
Urban myth.
I don't think it is an urban.
Urban myth.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, she was huge in the late 80s, early 90s. The rumour is she's one of the orphans in this film.
Oh, okay. That
No.
sounds like the sort of thing that's made up.
Yeah. I need to talk about the end. The ending that they went with in the movie was she climbs up a really odd bridge.
Yes, which I always thought was like the Brooklyn Bridge or something, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
a random bridge in New Jersey.
Like it's
Yeah.
been raised up or something like that.
Which again, I don't think I ever clocked, but I always thought it was just like, you know, at the Harbour Bridge or something where they're climbing up. But
I
no,
thought that too.
Because
it's a
I was
raised
talking
bridge.
It's
about
a-
this with Mikey before when we were talking about like it's weird, it's like
like a
train
railway.
tracks, but that is what it is. It's a train bridge that's been lifted up. You know, it's like a tower bridge type
Let it
thing.
pass.
It lifts up to
Yeah.
yeah.
And
yeah.
so they've opened that up.
It's the NX bridge over the Passaic River in New Jersey.
And also the fact that Punjab is in a helicopter, which wasn't invented until 1938, and this
Oh,
is in
really?
1933.
Yeah, no, we checked. I'm like, what's helicopters invented? So we Googled
Ah.
it. Not invented at that time, unless they had a prototype from J. Edgar.
That's true.
So he spots them from quite far away, and Punjab, who throughout the film there are many issues with.
There's a lot of issues.
Yes.
with
Houston,
this.
I have a problem.
Yes.
But there are many issues that we've got.
Well, no,
with
let's
it.
go early on with
But
Punjab.
this is the thing. This
Yeah.
is the problem. That Punjab is on 2 occasions is making things fly around a room.
He's a mystic.
He
Oh my
makes
God, I
he makes a
forgot
plane fly around the room, and then he also moves a vase from one side of the room to the other. So, as a kid, I always assumed that when Punjab came to save the day, how is he going to do it? He's going to magic her
horse.
into the
Yes,
helicopter.
yes.
But no, he unfurls his turban,
Yes.
uses it as a rope. Now, this is a really, really unusual Deus Ex Machina.
Yes, it is.
And this is the one that they went for.
And,
wonder if
and
they
they never
had-
mentioned the magic.
Can you
or anything.
imagine the mental shit that they discarded to come up with this?
I wonder if they had like a Sikh consultant to be like, so this is normal, yeah? You just can take off your turban at any time and just like use it.
That's what it's for,
use it for a
right?
But
practical.
also, why would you set up the fact that he can do seemingly close hand magic?
Well, no,
but
I don't
can't
think it's
save a
magic.
child?
I think
No, it's not like a trick though. It's
he-
like
he's doing it.
actually,
He's got such
actually magic.
spiritual.
So he can levitate. He spiritually can levitate
Yeah.
things during musical numbers, especially, and yet he cannot save a child from a bridge without his hat off.
It's not ideal. None of it's ideal.
No.
I wonder if that. I know that that character was in the comic strip, so I wonder if that sort of mystic levitation stuff came from the comic strip because it just seems strangely out of place.
It's very strange.
And I think they
Um,
use like the sort of the cobra sounding charm things in the song where he's making the plane go around as well. So it's like they're using
Yeah.
allegories which they're not coming back.
Oh,
to.
100%. Yes, I think there was a lot of very kind of like
Houston's
lazy
like, wrap it up,
cultural
wrap it up,
storytelling.
we're running out of money. Which is saying something for this film.
Other things I want to talk about are the fact that it is an allegory for the breakdown of capitalism.
The entire musical.
Yes.
Yes.
It is an allegory for the rise of feminism.
Okay.
She's the statue of the little girl in front of the bull on Wall Street, really.
She is. Yeah.
Yeah, in the sense that obviously he has deep-rooted patriarchal views and sexist views, which she challenges and smashes, and makes him. And when I say him, of course, I'm referring to Oliver Warburgs.
Will Staggs.
Yeah.
I put it to you that one of the key differences between Oliver and Annie is that in Oliver, as we said, he doesn't really have any agency. He goes into this underworld, then is essentially just plucked out of it and put into the world of like wealth and capitalism at the end. And so he's the one who changes from being an orphan to being like, okay, I'm now going to be a rich boy.
But he was already a rich boy. He was just in the wrong place.
Yeah, but in terms of like what his life is like. And
And he
whereas
didn't
with
break the crime ring
Annie,
or
she
anything.
goes into that world of wealth and is like, I'm bringing this down from the inside. And she changes everyone to her
Yeah.
worldview.
Yeah.
So
She's a socialist.
yeah, it's a big difference.
Something that I really like about the writing of the film and the musical is the way that they lean into references of the time with no care for the fact that we have no fucking idea who Don Budge is.
Yes, that's true.
I love that.
But do you think that that's a difference between 1980 and 2020?
Particularly-
No.
but it's also being made by a man who remembers all those references. So he's
Yeah.
like, fuck 'em, keep it in.
Was it the Mona Lisa that gets brought in and he says, hang on in my
Correct.
bathroom? Like things like that as a young child, I didn't know what that was. And also because not being American, but also being a young child, I didn't know who Herbert Hoover was.
Yep.
I listened to that on the soundtrack.
Can we now talk about the fact that Carol Burnett had a chin job in the middle of, at the end of the
I
movie?
forgot this.
What?
It's the reshoot.
The reshoot.
Okay,
What
so
are
we
you
haven't
talking
talked
about?
about.
I
Okay,
don't
Okay, Richard.
so Easy Street. They originally filmed Easy Street. They spent $1 million on building a whole like outdoor set for this elaborate Easy Street filming. Okay, the song Easy Street was going to be the biggest musical number in the film. It took a week to shoot, but on reviewing the footage, the scene was considered to be overstuffed and sour. 2 months after filming finished, they got them back and did a reshoot with the version that was more closely based on how it is in the stage show. The version that we know and love, where they're moving around the
Kicking
house
into
and her walking into doorways and all that kind of thing.
So fun.
So it was a reshoot, but Carol Burnett had a chin job in between the original
She
filming
has an
and the
overbite or
reshoots.
something.
So she actually, if you go back and look at it, her chin looks significantly different in Easy Street than does the rest of the movie.
Oh my goodness!
Well, the
I'm
fact
going to go
that
and do
she
that.
has a chin in Easy Street, which is the big difference.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
And apparently she said to John Huston, I've had this. He goes, just act more determined.
My huge thanks to David and Lisa Campbell for talking to me about Annie. God, that was fun. Send me all of your correspondence to everymusicalpod@gmail.com or via social media at everymusicalpod. On this Friday's Encore episode, I'll be doing something a little bit different, so you'll see what that is. But I welcome all of your correspondence on Annie for that. I've been doing some great interviews over these COVID isolation times. The good thing about it is that everyone's locked up at home and everyone's learned how to use Zoom. So for some of the forthcoming musicals, I've been able to talk to some of the original creators. I've got some really amazing people coming on that I will let you know about soon, and you can expect those in the coming weeks. Sorry to be so cryptic about it, but I don't want to spoil all the surprises. If you want to hear the episodes early or announcements early, then sign up to our Patreon. You can do that from as little as $5 a month. There's a link in the bio. If you can't afford to do that, we completely understand, and we also accept 5-star reviews on your favourite podcast app. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you on Friday. Thank you for listening to Every Musical Ever. I'm your host, Richard Carroll. This theme music was composed and performed by Brent Hill, with the alternative versions performed by Sheridan Harbridge. The artwork for the show was designed by Mills Achi. The introduction, content warning, and outroduction were read by Leo Campbell. Please rate and review us wherever you found this podcast. Find us on social media at Every Musical Pod and visit the Patreon for more content. See you next week.
Every musical ever.
Thank you for listening to Every Musical Ever. If you liked it, you can give a star review on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you found this podcast. And don't forget to subscribe.